Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for our training webinar covering equipment and maintenance issues. So this webinar is one of a series of webinars that we've designed. You may have seen some of the others. They're on appearance issues or application issues, and we designed them to help train professional powder coaters on many different aspects of the powder coating business. And we know that we have a very wide range of customers with an even wider range of experience and interest. And we also know that we can't capture everything in one short webinar, but we're going to try and run through some of the most common equipment issues that come up and also give you some top tips for managing your line. So Jason Parton, one of our application engineers who's got 23 years of experience in powder application, he's going to take you through this webinar. He's going to take a look at some of the most common issues around equipment maintenance in general, and then he's going to specifically take you through some information on hoses, pumps, and fluidizing issues. So with that, over to Jason.
Hello, everyone. Glad you could join us today. I think we're just going to start today with maintaining your line, and probably the most important issue or thing to do in maintaining your line is having a preventative maintenance program. I don't think there's anything you can do that will make your line operate better, be able to have repeatability in what you do on a day-to-day basis, and always have a consistent quality product. So I'm a big fan of preventive maintenance, and I think we'll start today just talking about the pre-treat side of it. Some of you guys don't have pre-treat, some of you do. For the ones that do, I think we all know that if you don't have a good base for the powder coat, then you might not have a good end product. So what's under the powder coat is just as important as the powder coating itself. So with our pre-treat systems, I'm a big fan of having a checklist. I'm a daily checklist where you check risers and nozzles to make sure you have good spray patterns. Checklist where you pull those out on a regular basis and clean them, check O-rings, make sure you don't have any plugged up. Other things that can be on that checklist would be pump pressures to make sure you have the same setting on a day-to-day basis, that you're not blowing parts off of a rack, or you make sure you have plenty of impingement in your wash system. Also, we talk about checklists. You guys have cleaner stages, you have phosphate stages. All those have parameters that they need to be ran in to make a quality product. So that's another item that should be on your checklist is what were my titrations, my temperatures of the stages, just to make sure at the end of the day, you've done what the manufacturer said you needed to do to have a quality product. So moving on, with the general equipment maintenance, everything about your line, if you don't maintain it, you will lose ability to apply powder. If your hoses wear, your pumps wear, if your fluidizing hopper is not fluidizing good enough, if your racks aren't clean, all of that adds up to you not applying powder as well. So let's just kind of start with the fluidizing hoppers. A lot of people don't use fluidizing hoppers as much now because of the box feed systems. So I am a big fan of a fluidizing hopper, especially if you're talking about metallics. I think you should run all metallics with a fluidizing hopper because it does a better job of keeping that applying a metallic and keeping a more even color across a metallic. But you need to make sure your membrane's not damaged. That fluidizing membrane, you can get it clogged up with powder, you can get it clogged up with moisture. Any of those things that either allow it to not let enough air through or too much air through in one place, like if it had a crack or something, all of that would affect how you are able to apply powder. Hoses and pumps, I'm a big fan of daily checks on all of those things, blowing them out every morning before you even start to shift. Make sure the O-rings are good in the pumps, make sure the pump's clean. blow the hose out, take the gun apart, blow all of that. Make sure you don't have any buildup in that system whatsoever. And that, if you do that every morning, then I think the chance of you getting built up throughout the day is really none, especially if you're doing, several color changes or things of that throughout the day. So one of the other things about kind of more of a housekeeping type issue is I'm a big fan of not spraying anything in your powder booth other than powder coating. Uh, there should not be aerosol cans anywhere in the area where you're spraying. I would prefer not to have any liquid paint in there. Items like WD-40 and things of that nature. All those things are contaminants, and I've seen over the years, time and time and time again, where somebody gets in the area with an aerosol touch-up can, and all of a sudden you've got 2 hours worth of craters and fish eyes on 400 wheels. So at no time should you have aerosols and other contaminants in the area where you spray powder. Just try to keep those in a separate part of the building. A little bit about ovens. It depends on what your need is, but I find you need to occasionally clean your oven. We have some big voters that clean their oven twice a year or once a year. Some of the smaller shops doing custom work, they probably find they need to clean their oven a little bit more often. If not, they'll see a little contamination. They'll see some dirt or grit falling down on the tops of their parts. So I would leave that more up to you on the volume that's going through there and what type of oven and things like that. But you need to have some kind of plan to keep that oven free of dust, free of dirt, and free of buildup for defects and for contamination purposes as well. So, a daily checklist could really include all your housekeeping issues, all your preventive maintenance issues, and just general daily items like your pre-treat titrations and settings and things of that nature. So let's talk a little bit about storage of powder. So our recommendation, and I believe probably powder manufacturer's recommendation, is going to be to store your powder ideally in 80-degree or less temperature with 50% relative humidity, give or take 10%. And that's pretty much the same window of where we recommend you apply powder as well. And there's a reason we give those, because we know that powder is stored in that temperature and applied in that temperature, but you're going to get your best performance out of that for the longest amount of time. So that said, it doesn't mean that you can't store it higher than that, and like 90 degrees or 100. But once you get outside of that window, there's a better chance that you could have negative results out of that powder. So if you can keep it under 80 degrees, 50% relative humidity, and it doesn't have to be anything special. We have customers that do it they find a corner of the building that's a little cooler than the rest and build a room there. I've seen little storage buildings with a small air conditioner unit in them. I've seen some pretty elaborate ones too. So it can be anything. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to suit your needs and keep the powder at a little lower temperature than 100 plus. So record keeping. For some of you guys, record keeping might not be required. I would say this though. If you do the record keeping up front, it might make life a little easier on down the road. So I'm a big fan of if I bring a product in for record keeping, it's good to have your technical data sheet, your TDS, or your SDS, which is your safety data sheet. So obviously your technical data sheet is going to tell you how that powder should be applied, how it should be cured, what the performance of that powder should be, what the gloss should be, just pretty much a general explanation of everything about that powder. Then the safety data sheet, the SDS, is more of a document that is a safety and health type document. How to store it, how to control it if it's spilled, or if you have a fire, or is it flammable, or is it a health hazard? So, those are the two documents that should probably always be accompanied with the product. And you can request that as you order that product. You can request those be sent with it. So, the first time I ordered this blue, I need an SDS and a TDS, and we'll happily, send that along with your first order. You guys store them in the thing and in your storage wherever, and go on. Another thing I like for record keeping, a lot of shops don't do this, and it makes me. But I'm a big fan of weighing the powder when I get done with it. We could sit and argue all day long about how much powder we think we're putting on, because I measured a few parts and they had 3 mils and this one had 2. But at the end of the day, if you weigh the box when you put it on the line and weigh the box when you take it off, you have the number that you used. And that doesn't mean that all went on the part, but when it comes to figuring your profit and are you making money, that's one of the places you can go back and whittle that number down to, I'm using more powder than I should be. What I have to do to get that into control. So that's pretty important to record keeping for you guys. And then just your general stuff. What KVs was I running on this powder? What did I have my microamp set up? What are my settings? All these things are good general information to keep records on. And I know some guys might paint a color one week and not see that color again for a long time. Some things you might paint every day, but it's always good to have a background or a history to go back to and look at. Color libraries. That's kind of interesting. We have some customers that have everything they've ever painted. They have it on a wall or in a room, or and it might not be perfectly set up, but they have, they've kept a part or they've kept a sample. Uh, if you're going to do that, I suggest you do that and really label it out good so you can go back through it easily. We ourselves supply what we call wall boards to customers, and it can be. I think the basic ones are just like our stock colors, but then we have some that contain our polychem colors, our special effects. I think there's upwards of 400 colors and special effects on there, and we sell these to shops, so they have something that they can show customers coming in instead of just your little card deck, which is a little hard to really compare. These are actual paint, powder coated chips that are hanging on the wall that you can get in your hand, and you can see the orange peel, you can see the gloss, you can see the actual coating. So it gives your customer a little bit better idea of what the color really is. So keeping detailed records, making sure your preventive maintenance, your housekeeping, all that's part of your records too. But I think you guys find if you track your stuff and keep records of it, down the road, it'll keep you from having some chaos that you might have a customer that needs to see all this before they're going to do business with you. If you got it, then you're one step ahead of the other guy. All right, next, let's talk about hoses and pumps a little bit. So the pump, probably, well, besides the gun, probably the most important part of the whole powder coating system. So most pumps nowadays are Venturi pumps, and pretty simple explanation of that is you put a tube down in the powder, your pump out of the top of that tube. We literally blow air across the top of that tube, which sucks powder up out of the hose or up out of the tube into the hose. Then we transport it to the gun. So that Venturi pump controls the ratio of powder feed air and atomizing air that's going out to the gun and on the part. There are wear parts in Venturi pumps. As those parts wear, you will see your performance of go down. The same setting will not draw you as much powder, or the same setting you might start to see a surge. You might not have enough air to keep it atomized throughout the hose, and then you get these big surges. So wear on a pump, wear on a gun, clog, or impact fusion in a pump, that's all going to cause you application issues at some point. Transfer pumps, no different than they are the same type of pump. They are a Venturi pump as well, just on a little bigger scale. If your transfer pump's not working, in some of your automatic systems, you're not going to get powder when you need powder the most. For me, I think you should look at your pumps every morning before you start. First thing in a shift, pull the pump, make sure your O-rings are good, blow it out. Blow it out, please remove your atomizing air and your powder flow air. There's no reason to blow. You can blow powder back up into that hose and get into your control, so there's really no reason to do that. Completely check throw or Venturi, whatever you want to call it. Make sure it's not wore out. Most of your EMA, they all make your own, but basically a gauge that if you insert it in the end of that throat and it goes in so far, that means it's wore too much. For you guys hands, and that's not a deal. You can adjust with your spray ability for guys using automatics. As you see that wear increase, you'll see your film build decrease. So you're going to either have to make an adjustment, you're going to have to put in a new As far as wear goes, depends on what kind of powders you're running. Metallics are going to wear a little more. We've got some new products that are great resistance. They tend to wear a little more. So on what you might see a little wear in throats and Venturi. A lot of people spray with too much air. They turn air pressure way up. The only purpose of the air is to get the powder to be able to move the powder throughout the system. So having too much air just causes you moving the powder faster, which means you wear parts faster, which means you have impact fusion worse. So I'm a big fan of turning my air down as much as possible. I try to turn it a little bit on, and then I turn it up till that surge goes away, and that's where I like to run my air. Obviously, there's application issues where you need to adjust that, but that's where I would always try to start. Checking the pickup tubes, maybe not something to do every day, but you're already there at the pump. Why not pull that tube out and blow it out as well? You've got the hose, blow that hose out, take the tip off your gun, pull the electrode out, clear it, make sure there's no fusion in there. Those are all daily items. Obviously, if you're running an automatic system, you're not in there as much, so it's probably a little more important on an automatic system. If you're doing a bunch of color changes, then maybe it's not as big a deal because you're blowing it out more often. If you're doing a handheld unit, I see several guys that do not clean. They just push the button and let it run through the clean cycle by itself. In my mind, that's not, although in most cases it does work, in my mind, that's not cleaning it good enough. I really think you need to take the gun apart. I really think you need to take the pump apart, all that out. I've seen too many times where you get contamination from one color to the because it didn't clean it good enough on its own. So just a few other things, we talk about the fluidizing membrane. You can get clogged up, they get powder filled up in time. If you ever rub anything against that and there's powder in there, it will tend to pick that up pretty significantly. Proper maintenance, again, is really the way to avoid all these problems. So please check pumps, hoses, wear parts on a daily basis, and you probably won't run into these issues very often. Basically, the hose is the next slide here. Again, the only purpose of the hose is to carry the powder from the hopper to the gun. The longer the hose, the more issues that come into play. So always try to keep your hose as short as possible. Fire maintenance. Some of your older hoses were was kind of one I always call them the soft blue ones. But, as you ran for a couple of days, you could put your thumb right where that powder come out of the pump, and you could feel a soft spot start to show up in that. So you knew for too long you were going to work with that. Well, the new conductive hoses they've really, engineered those to where they last probably 10 times longer than the old blue hoses did. In fact, that actually are engineered with a design inside the hose keep it collecting impact fusion as well. And then they're conductive, so they don't add a charge to the powder as it's going through the hose. Some of them old blue hoses, it would put a negative charge on it as it traveled through the hose, and by the time you got to the gun, you were already, losing some application issues. So new hoses have really come a long way, and especially in use and maintenance. I don't know if you guys use anything to clean your hoses with. We have, I've seen people do several things. There's some new out there where you shoot a foam tube through there. I think they work pretty good. I've seen several people cut sponges into small pieces, blow through hoses with the air, and it takes some extra powder out of there. Something we used to do, on our automatic boost, we would take the hoses off and run them through an old wringer washer. Any impact fusion that was stuck to the walls in there, it would literally crack it off there. We'd blow them out, put them back on, use them. In many cases, actually with metallic colors and some of these fluoropolymers that we see, or where you have extreme different chemistries. In many cases, we see people have designated hoses, so you're not running so much stuff through the same hose all the time. So for this color, they have a set of hoses that they only use for that color because it might cause issues with other colors. It's become quite common in some of the, especially in these more expensive powders and the metallics and things of that nature, where, if you have a problem, the cost gets really high really fast if you have some contamination there. So, and you know what? If you're going to replace hoses, please don't go buy the cheapest thing you can find. Get with your manufacturer of your equipment. Get the right size, get the right type. Hoses they make today are much better than they have been in the past. And again, don't make your hose any longer than it needs to be. The longer the hose, the more application issues you're going to have. Kind of back to your housekeeping. Always keep your hoses tied up fairly neat. Do not take the zip tie and squeeze them out. Any grease or tightness is the perfect spot for impact fusion. Take a sharp turn with your hose. That's a spot for fusion. Of course, all those things lead to decreased powder flow, surges, such that. But try to keep your hoses up out of the floor where you're not stepping on them. Neat. kinks and restrictions. So let's talk next about fluidizing issues. So we kind of said earlier that a lot of people don't use fluidizing hoppers anymore, but I am a fan of fluidizing hoppers. I think you get a better powder out of a fluidizing hopper. With that said, if you don't fluidize powder properly, then you kind of defeated the purpose. So, the whole purpose of putting air in the powder is so we can move it through the hose. If you do not get air in that powder, it will not readily move the hose, the length of the hose throughout the gun, and then it will not spray pattern at the end of the gun. So the whole purpose is just to be able to move powder. If you put too much air into the powder, you need more air holes than you are have an application of the common problem that we see is people have that fluidizing hopper turned up so much it's bubbling out the top, which is a waste. I already said that's too much air. You're not getting the amount of powder at the gun that you should be getting. We see people with it not turned up high enough, so it's really not fluidized at all. And once you suck it up through the tube, then it just dies out in the hose because it's not got enough air in it to move through the hose. We see issues with humidity in the fluidizing. People don't store their powder properly, or they don't have the temperature right, or the humidity's really high, and then powder doesn't want to fluidize properly in that case either. So if you're not fluidizing it properly and consistently, then you'll have issues at the end of the process applying properly and consistently. And, another issue that kind of makes that even worse is when you throw reclaim into the mix. I think we all know that virgin powder fluidizes much better than reclaim powder. And the main reason for that is virgin powder is a much larger, so there's more surface area of that particle for the air to hold it up, pick it up, and hold it up. Whereas it'll to the bottom, and the air doesn't pick it up. That's why we discuss having a good ratio of virgin powder to reclaim powder. So much cause fluidization issues, and then on to application issues. So always keep that reclaiming. Let's keep your reclaim mixed in. Don't mix it in at too much of a rate, and you should not see fluidizing issues if you do that properly. So one thing when you're looking into a powder hopper, so if you fill it, say you got a 100-pound hopper there and you put 50 pounds in it. Well, until you turn the air on, that looks like there's hardly any powder at all. But once you turn the air on, that powder will lift up and, probably double or triple in height. You should only turn enough air onto that so it looks like it is simmering, just small little bubbles, just a movement in the powder, kind of like people compare it to a pot of soup or something. You don't need big bubbles, you don't need a big boil, you just need a little bit of movement. And one of the ways that I've learned over the years, if you put your hand in the mix and it feels like you're moving cool water, then you've probably got it right where you need it. Like you're still like really flowing through there when you don't have enough air. So that's a little tip. And then, a lot of these systems don't have, a lot of you guys are just running a box straight in there, so you dump so much. It's good for you to mark a line that if I put this much in here without it fluidized, that it's going to move up, to another level. So it's good to have a fill mark there, so don't fill it full and turn the air on, because it's just going to blow it out the top of it. So I think let's move on. Let's move on to, your fluidizing bed. So we don't see as many fluidizing beds in powder coating anymore. We still see them used quite a bit in the thermoplastic powders. They still use fluidizing beds a lot, but it's kind of a, now it's an older way of applying powder, but the basic concept is, and some of these are quite large, to have a bed of powder that's, I've seen them tanks that are 5 foot long and 6 foot wide and 3 foot deep. They literally they fluidize the powder and bring a part in on a conveyor and lower it down in there and pick it up and bring it out. And they literally are just using the fluidization of the powder, the heat in the part to attract it and coat it. So any of us that have been around that know that's not necessarily a efficient process. You can have some waste there because it's normally a higher film build type situation. But it's still common in several things. I think I've seen dishwasher racks, playground equipment, several things in the last year that they're still coating like that. I would say the biggest reason they're not around anymore is because there is some waste associated with that. You usually have a large amount of powder tied up in a fluidized bed, and you're applying a lot of powder and your consistency is not there. Also, if you get into fine situations, it doesn't fluidize as well. It wants to rat hole. So the application can be a chore. And in today's age, a fast, economical, and repeatable processes to fluidize in bed just doesn't really fit those things as much as some of the big automatic systems do. So, another thing that we see with those a lot of time is they're pretty reliable on particle size. So if you get a big swing in particle size, your film builds will significantly change. Biggest thing to me is if your part temperature is different, or amount of time in the tank or above the tank is different, you will see a significant amount of difference in film build there as well. So I think that pretty much covers everything we've gotten on hoses, pumps, fluidizing, and things of that nature. As we got several more resources, so I'll let Fiona finish out here.
Thanks, Jason. As Jason said, we have a whole host of other resources that are available to you. These include videos, guides, blogs, an ebook. There's even troubleshooting posters available for your line that you can put up on the wall there to help as a reference material. And then also, you can find all of those on our website, ifscoatings.com. And then if you do have a specific question about maybe one of the issues that's been raised today, or even something else, feel free to email us in on coatingsinfo@ifscoatings.com, and Jason or Dave or one of our other application engineers will do their best to answer your questions. So thanks very much, and we look forward to hearing from you next time.